Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Dr. Stephen Moore, and I'm calling in from my home in Jupiter, Florida, and we're very excited for you to join us here tonight. We've been working on this project now in the field for around 13 years now, and since the advent of this new technology that just came out a few years ago, it has been really incredible to see how this is sweeping across the U.S. and really changing and improving healthcare, particularly in medicine and other fields as well. And so I always enjoy talking to physicians across the United States and do a little bit of traveling down to South America, because I think we all want the same thing and for our patients is we really want to improve preventative healthcare. And when I do this talk to groups of physicians and I ask these three questions, very few physicians will raise their hands that they're satisfied with preventative health care, reimbursements, or lifestyle. And we've got a lot of problems that are taking place in healthcare, and we all know that medicine has done some tremendous things to treat disease and prevent some diseases and really make some huge advancements, but we also know that there are a lot of pieces in medicine that are missing. Medicine is not working for everybody, and I'm just going to give an example of somebody that's in my family. This is my sister here on the right, and her husband and their three children, and her husband Stephen, that's his mom Joanne. So Joanne really and Stephen really never cared much about their health. They just figured that one day if they do get a disease, they'll just go seek great doctors and they'll take a pill or get a surgery and they'll get it fixed. And even though they had the resources to take care of themselves, nobody ever talked to them about making their health a priority, because I think one of the challenges that we face in healthcare is that we tend to define health as the absence of disease. In other words, I'm healthy, I don't have a disease. And we all know that people have lost their health years, if not decades, before that disease is diagnosed. And so what can we do to steer people to a better path of health? And so I was up in New York visiting my family, and I had tested Joanne with the technology we're going to talk about tonight, and she was at the bottom range, very, very poor, but for whatever reason, she didn't want to do anything because to her, she was healthy. Well, a few years after that, she ends up getting diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, seeks out the best possible doctors and treatments that she could find, and she battled cancer for about 3 years. And during that time, she decided to change her diet, change her lifestyle, become a vegan. It took the cancer diagnosis for her to change, but it was too late for her, and she ended up passing away just a few months ago. Fortunately, what ended up happening out of that story is the rest of the family started to pay attention to their health. They started to say, what could we do to keep ourselves healthy? Because when I had tested Joanne with the device we're going to talk about tonight, she had a very similar score as my niece is there at the bottom of this picture. And my sister immediately said, we have to do something about the diet and lifestyle that we have so that we can steer ourselves and our children to a better path of health. The sooner that we can intervene to get people to start to change their behavior, the healthier we're going to be. We cannot invent enough drugs or do enough surgeries to fix the problems that are in healthcare. We need to focus more on prevention, and that's what we're going to talk about here tonight. And so let's talk about the agenda tonight. We'll talk about some challenges that we're having in medicine, also about our diets and how they're inadequate, the supplement market, and a lot of patients are turning to supplements, and we'll talk about the problems as well as some solutions to help better guide your patients. We'll talk about some technologies and products that will help you and your patients, and then we'll talk about the science of the company as well as a revenue stream. Keep in mind that if you're a physician here listening to this tonight, not only are you looking at something that's going to dramatically improve the health of your patients, I believe that, and many physicians believe that this should be done and implemented whether or not you make a dime with this, because it's the right thing to do. But just to grab your attention as well, you're looking at a $100,000 plus cash revenue stream that you can add to your practice this year off a very minimal investment. And Dr. Feld, who's here with us tonight, is going to share his experience as well. And so let's talk about evidence-based medicine right now. So like I said, medicine has done a lot of great things in healthcare, but when we look at the bottom line statistics from the CDC, we've got 1,600 people a day dying from cancer. Heart disease, almost 2,000 people a day. I mean, if you just take those two diseases alone, that's equivalent to a 9/11 attack happening every single day here in America. We've got 86 million people with prediabetes. 2/3 of us are overweight. 50 million people have osteopenia. And what do all these diseases have in common is they're metabolic issues. These are diseases that are related to diet and lifestyle. And diet is now the #1 cause of preventable disease in America. It just overtook smoking. And so in medicine, what do we do to address these things? Well, we tell patients to eat healthy. Well, that's not enough. If that was enough, we wouldn't be seeing a lot of these issues. So we're going to talk about really why we should be making some changes, because in America we are spending $4 trillion trying to treat disease. It's 1 out of every $4 in our GDP. And people are sicker than ever. These diseases continue to rise. Physicians are more and more dissatisfied with healthcare, as well as our patients. And income is continuing to decline in medicine. We've got ACAs that are cutting reimbursement rates. This was an ACA that just cut, this was last year, 4.5%. And so if a doctor is running a 50% overhead, you just took nearly a 10% cut in your bottom line revenue. And every year you've got to pay your employees more, pay your rent more. Everything else goes up and reimbursements go down. And it's making it more and more difficult for physicians to practice and really enjoy medicine. And to make matters worse, Medicare, more and more patients are going into Medicare system and less funds are being available. And so you're getting squeezed on both ends, and that's why you're seeing such cuts in Medicare reimbursements where it almost doesn't even make sense financially to see Medicare patients. So we've got a lot of problems here, and Albert Einstein, good friend of all of us, right? He would say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And so we have to start thinking outside of the box in medicine and start to think of other ways that we can address healthcare and help our practices thrive again. And so we're talking about a new opportunity to help patients, and not necessarily a new opportunity. I mean, this is really where medicine came from. You know, Hippocrates said, "Let thy medicine be thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." But yet medicine has gotten really far away from that with the pharmaceutical companies. And so there's a new opportunity now to go back to the roots of where medicine came from with a technology that fits the medical model really well, because according to the USDA, nobody is getting optimal nutrition through their diet. This was a published study out of 22,000 people. Now, I'm sure there are a few people out there that are getting good nutrition, but for the most part, people are not getting optimal nutrition through their diet. And that caused, 15 years ago, this isn't really new news, but it does take medicine a decade or two to catch up with what's happening in the literature. JAMA published an article saying that all adults should be taking a multivitamin because of how bad our diets are. And so that's what people are doing. 50% of your patients are taking a supplement, whether you want them to or not. And they're going out there and they're buying stuff down the road from you at their GNC or their vitamin shop, where there's a millennial telling them what kind of products they should be taking. And the problem is there's no really easy way to measure the effectiveness of these supplements. There's a lot of problems that are out there. The vitamin shop, as an example, had a lead contamination issue about 5 years ago. And they recalled their multivitamin line, and just a couple years after that, they had another lead contamination issue. Why does that happen? Well, the reason is because the right quality and proper quality control measures are not in place when you're dealing with a lot of these supplements that are out there that are driven by profit, not by quality. And so what we're going to do is, rather than sending those patients out the door, we're going to show you a way to address this in your practice. Let's talk about how big the vitamin and nutritional supplement market is. In the United States alone, it's growing by $1 to $2 billion a year. By 2017, you're talking about a $36 billion market. This is bigger than the statin industry. It is a huge market that's very confused, very fragmented. And as a physician, you're also a business owner, at least most of you are. And when you start to see numbers like this with an industry that is problematic, with something that is really fits the needs of what patients are looking for and what they need, if you can do it better in your practice, with a tool and a product line to do that, we're going to show you how to redirect this multi-billion-dollar revenue stream into your practice. And so here's what happens is patients go to the vitamin shop or they go to Costco or wherever they buy things, and the question is what supplement do you take? Right? What supplement do you recommend? Are all brands the same? How do you know if it works? Well, if you're not measuring, you really don't know. We don't just go tell patients to go take something to lower their cholesterol and go buy it anywhere, Mexico, mail order, wherever it is. You're dealing with a very controlled substances there. But when you look at the supplement market, you don't have the same controls that are in place that you have in the pharmaceutical industry, and that's why a lot of these problems take place. And so what we do in medicine is we evaluate things, we make a recommendation, and we reevaluate to see if our treatment is actually working. So we do that with blood pressure. A lot of physicians now are doing that with vitamin D, so we're doing nutritional testing already, really limited nutritional testing, but look at the change in testing for vitamin D and all the research on what vitamin D can do and doctors recommending vitamin D. There's a huge trend in that direction. And you're drawing blood, you're sending it out, and physicians are doing that. But what do we do with the rest of the supplements that we're lacking in our diet? Well, just go take something and cross your fingers and hope it works, because there isn't really an effective way to measure diet and lifestyle or the effectiveness of these supplements that are out there. In fact, there hasn't been until now. And so what we're here to talk about is a science-based approach to address nutrition and prevention in your practice, a cash ancillary revenue stream with residuals, in other words, a way to generate income that's not tied necessarily to that patient visit. And then if you're interested, we have we're building a network of physicians right now, and there's an opportunity to work with us to help us expand this into medicine. Because what we can do now with the biophotonic scanner is within 30 seconds, we can test antioxidants and oxidative stress in the body completely non-invasively in less time than it takes to take a blood pressure test. We don't have to take a blood draw like you do with vitamin D, and it only costs $1 for you to perform this test. And so this is something that's very convenient and is done by an MA in the practices that we're working with. We have about 12 to 1,500 practices that are using this right now, primarily in medicine, and they're using this as a vital sign when they take the rest of the vitals with that patient. So very, very fast, battery operated. It works off an iPad app. This is the 3rd generation unit. There have been over $100 million that's been invested in this technology to get it to where it is today. And it was originally funded by the National Institute of Health to screen for risk factors of disease. There are tremendous studies, over 85 studies that have been peer-reviewed and published on this. We don't have time to go over all of those today, but I'll highlight just a few of them. And what this is able to do for the first time is we can now measure these carotenoid antioxidants in the body. The carotenoids are the molecules that give the fruits and vegetables their bright colors, right? Eat a colorful diet rich in fruits and vegetables so that we can get these antioxidants to fight off these free radicals. So everyone's trying to get antioxidants in their body, but nobody really knows what their levels are because there's never been an easy, inconvenient way to measure them until this technology came out. And so when we look at a cross-section of the cell, you can see what these carotenoids will do and what these other antioxidants do is they actually provide the protection mechanisms for the phospholipid bilayer that it does not get oxidized. Because when that phospholipid bilayer gets oxidized, it causes a lot of dysfunction in the cell, and that causes a lot of disease. When the DNA obviously gets oxidized, that's what leads to cancer. And so you have a lot of issues that are taking place, and so your cells have this natural protection of these carotenoids that are protecting this phospholipid bilayer and creating basically a shield to protect every cell in your body. And since they are in every cell in the body of the protective mechanism, they're related to a lot of diseases that are out there. And we're going to go over a few of them on this webinar here tonight. So the technology is based off of Raman spectroscopy, which is Nobel Prize winning science. This is how the technology works. A LED light at a certain frequency of 473 nanometers just shines into the skin. It bounces back at a different frequency, and we can very accurately determine the levels of these carotenoid antioxidants in the skin. It's actually more accurate than doing a blood test and has tremendous clinical research behind it. Not only can we do the test, but we also have the only product that's been proven and guaranteed to increase antioxidant levels within 60 days. And so this is a product that has been clinically proven to work and goes through pharmaceutical type of safety studies. So what happens is the patient will come in, your MA does the test with a vital sign, the patients will get their baseline score. If their score is low, which many patients are, we've done about 30 million scans worldwide, so it's the largest nutritional database of its kind. And what we've found is that 94% of the population is suboptimal, 9 out of 10 patients. And we would expect that when you look at what people are eating, but now we can give people a number that's emotional and personal to them, and we can now encourage them to change. And when you put your patient's hand in front of this device, it is amazing the connection that they make between their diet and lifestyle and their health outcomes. And so if their scores are low, we want to recommend, obviously, the difficult things, which is changing diet and lifestyle, but we also want to recommend the Life Pack and ageLOC Youth product to increase their score. And within 2 months, when that patient comes back, they'll see an improvement in their score on these products, or they get their money back. And then it takes about 4 to 6 months where they'll reach a full saturation level. And then you just want to maintain that level of protection for good cellular health. And so when we've done these tests, the scale is very easy. We're not trying to turn doctors into nutritionists. This is mostly like a gas gauge. Low is bad, high is good. Based on the scans that we've done, we find that people that have very healthy behaviors will score over 50,000, which is in this blue zone over here on the right. But you look at your average smokers down here in the red, your diabetics, your obese patients, your cancer patients are going to tend to be down here, your unhealthy people. Now, if you think about children, and right now we have a generation for the first time that's going to have a shorter lifespan than their parents, and you start to scan the children that are out there, the average child is in this red zone around where the smokers are because of what they're eating. And it's really fun to scan children because you can get them to change their behavior almost immediately. And then they can see the results within a short amount of time, and then it becomes a fun game for them. I've got a 5-year-old boy and a 3-year-old boy, and they have fun competing on who can get their score up, and they know that they have to get antioxidants from fruits and vegetables, and we give them some of the supplements as well. Your average American's in this 20,000, 24,000 range, and on these products that we're here to show you tonight, we're seeing dramatic improvements in these antioxidant scores. These products work. Not only can we prove it in these scores, but we're seeing a lot of really great clinical outcomes as well. So what's the significance of measuring these carotenoid antioxidants? So I'm just going to fly through a few studies here, and we can always send you some more information to read if you'd like. But this is a study done on hemoglobin A1C. Higher levels of carotenoids are associated with lower hemoglobin A1C levels. We look at metabolic syndrome, and antioxidant status is associated with metabolic syndrome. You look at oxidative stress and rheumatoid arthritis, and you see relationships there. I mean, these antioxidants are related to almost every disease that we have out there because, again, they're really what are protecting our cells. And tonight, I've got the pleasure of introducing everybody to Dr. David Feld. Dr. Feld is an OBGYN in Jupiter, Florida. He's been in practice for 38 years. He has a tremendous amount of experience with this technology and with this product line with his patients. He's been had this in his practice now. I think he's had all 3 generations. He was one of the early adopters here. He's had this about 8 years of experience with this. Delivered a lot of babies. He went to Boston School of Medicine, and he's also an avid marathon runner. And Dr. Feld, we're very delighted to have you here tonight. Thanks for taking some time with us.
Well, good evening, everybody. As Steve said, I've been doing this a while now, about 9.5 years with the scanner program. And what I talk to patients and doctors about is very simple. Are we better now than we were when we started our practice? Are we better now than when you first started seeing your doctor? And, you know, I've watched people age with me. I've been in town here in Palm Beach County 39 years. And what really hit me about 10 years ago, around the same time as I saw the scanner, was that people were aging with me, and I was aging better. I wasn't bragging. I'm not the most beautiful looking person in the world. But what really counted for me was what was going on inside. And my family history is cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. And now more than ever, those diseases are rampant. In my career, breast cancer has doubled between the ages of 25 and 40, and I needed to do something about it. And it wasn't just about talking to every single patient about nutrition. It was about my patients asking me over and over, what do you recommend for a supplement? And I didn't believe in supplements. I still don't believe in vitamins, and we don't have vitamins. This research engine that we're going to talk about tonight, they don't make vitamins. They make complete supplements that are important for cellular biology. So about 10 years ago, I walked into one of the health food stores or vitamin shops, and I did a deer in the headlights. I looked at what was there. I looked who was behind the counter. It was some, maybe a freshman in high school trying to make a couple extra dollars. And I said, here I am, a board certified MD, and I'm going to ask him what to take. So I left. Ironically, as things happen sometimes, surreptitiously, my business partner, Kathy Petrillo, came to my office a number of times and showed me the scanner, introduced the information to me. And as most physicians are, I was reluctant because I was very uncomfortable with the idea of sales. But this is different, everybody. This isn't sales. We now have 20 years of use of this instrument, about 10, 12 years that Stephen has been doing it. And we now have an accredited biomarker, the most important biomarker that's been created in my career. So for those out there listening to this, I have 3 things to ask of you. Number 1, do you have a vision? Is that vision just to be the same physician that you've been every single day, pounding out the same patients, giving out the same advice, writing the same prescriptions? Second thing, is there something innovative in your life or in your career that you might want to bring to the table? And the third thing is those two are worthless without impact. And so I had a vision about 10 years ago, and that vision was to improve health. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer, improve odds. We're not walking on water, we're not curing cancer. How can we improve our odds? Let's get back to the basics. And the basics are cell biology. The basics are nutrition, which we as physicians, the average physician, doesn't really learn a lot. So when I looked at this instrumentation, I now realized that I can measure, and here's the patent, I can measure risk factors for cancer and other diseases. And I don't know if you guys were available on Sunday morning, but CBS had an incredible show on Sunday morning. They talked to an oncologist and a nutritionist who specializes in oncology at Johns Hopkins. And she said, eat the rainbow. Eat colorful fruits and vegetables. Get your antioxidant levels up. Patients who have cancer, whether they have it now or whether they've had it before, are nutritionally challenged. So remember what I said. We wanted a vision, we wanted innovation, and now we want to know, in the last 10 years, have I impacted these patients? And the answer is yes. I have thousands and thousands of patients and hundreds of physicians who have worked with Stephen and me, and we have been able to improve their clinical outcomes. We have reduced the incidence of breast cancer. We have reduced the incidence of autoimmune diseases. We have reduced the incidence of toxemia and other diseases in pregnancy, and I have reduced the recurrences of HPV. Again, all through nutrition. The most important thing is that we can measure your antioxidant levels and give you an assessment, a risk factor for cancer and other diseases. And in 60 days, upon you as a physician, upon me as a physician, a recommendation, and in 60 days, we can effect a significant change. So what's really gotten me more than ever now is in the last 10 years, the patients who listen to me and take my advice, to my knowledge, I have not had one single breast cancer in those 10 years. On the other hand, those patients that I've measured very low over and over, I've been able to diagnose earlier breast cancer. And I just recently, 8 months ago, had 3 women, 24, 27, and 29-year-old, that did not believe that they could have anything as horrible as this. And when I kept measuring them, because I use this as a standard of care, I measure every single patient every visit, their stress levels continued to rise and their immune systems continued to fall, and I ordered mammograms. And for those doctors out there right now who think that your patients in their 20s can't get breast cancer, think again, because they all had breast cancer, and the 29-year-old lost both breasts. Now, there is lots of literature, and Stephen's going to pull up the next slide. There's lots of literature out there regarding levels of antioxidants, and this is one of the most incredible articles that came out. You can see the date, December 7th, 2012, and what they did is they took a number of hundreds of women, and they did blood tests on them because they didn't have the scanner, and they found that there was a direct correlation between breast cancer and levels of antioxidants, lutein, zeaxanthin, astaxanthin, and total carotenoids. Now, that's not me talking. That's Harvard Medical School at the Brigham and Women, published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. And while this wasn't the first study, this was one of the major studies that came out to say, we know that there is a relationship. And then a few months ago, an even more extraordinary study came out from the University of Palermo, and it said if you have breast cancer, and I think Stephen has that slide, if you have breast cancer, put your hand on the scanner. Now read the slide, read the caption. Raman spectroscopic measurements of dermal carotenoids, that's what I do in every patient, in those women known to have breast cancer, providing a positive impact. When you ramp up your fruit and vegetable servings, your 5-year survival is longer. And as Stephen and I discussed today and yesterday, I've already gotten approval to place this in multiple breast cancer centers because they're now believing that nutrition is a key to these nutritionally challenged patients. Now, if we move on to the next slide, you'll see also that we can impact the most common thing that I see in my practice on a daily basis, and that is the human papillomavirus, or the wart virus. Now, everybody thinks this is a new virus. This isn't new. This has been around since Adam and Eve. It's just that we can assess the effectiveness of measuring it, and we now know that when I have a patient with HPV virus of their cervix, I don't necessarily have to do a laser on them or do a cone biopsy, or worse than that, a hysterectomy. We know that we can change their habits. And by the way, the scanner isn't just to sell the products that the company that we work with is so successful at. It's to change the patient's lifestyle. Stop smoking. Raise your antioxidant levels with stop smoking. Smoking cessation is key. Lose weight. Obesity is a major risk factor for all kinds of diseases because it's inflammatory. So when I have a patient with HPV, I go through a series of what I recommend, not to cure them. We're never going to cure HPV. Our goal is to reduce the incidence of recurrences. And then this is a magnificent example. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, my friend Harvey, who is a patient's husband, came to me about 9 years ago when I first started on the program. And he said, Dr. Feld, what is that box of LifePak Nano sitting on your desk? And I said, Harvey, it's the only comprehensive supplement that I can recommend that's safe, effective, and comes with a 60-day guarantee that you're going to improve your health. And I didn't know Harvey from the neck down. He was a very handsome gentleman with a full head of hair, which I always look at because I'm missing my hair. And he had beautiful skin on his face. And about 8 weeks into taking Nano twice a day, he said, Dave, do you have an email? And I said, sure, Harv, what's up? He said, I'm going to send you some pictures. And I said, Harvey, you're a very nice gentleman, and I like you and your wife, but I'm not that kind of guy. These are the pictures that he sent. Harvey had had unremitting 42 years without ever having a remission of severe total body psoriasis. To this day, he is in remission. With the next slide. And that was only 8 weeks of treatment. And for the last 8 to 8.5 years, he has not had an exacerbation, does not take any other drugs except LifePak Nano on a BID basis. So for those out there, don't be afraid to engage. You're never going to be embarrassed. I work, as Stephen and I do, with the #1 research engine in the world. This is an age and disease preventative program. Nobody can stop the aging process, but we can certainly slow it and improve how we age, and we can improve clinical outcomes. And these are just a couple of samples, but I've been able to get people off of their blood pressure medicine, their cholesterol medicine. I've helped improve the clinical outcomes of lupus and rheumatoid. So we have the answers, we have the program. Your patients are begging for a recommendation, and what drove me, what the paradigm shift was, the biophotonic scanner. So do your due diligence and give your patients a chance.
Thank you, Dr. Feld, so much for joining us and sharing those stories. And again, the manufacturer guarantees an improvement in carotenoid antioxidant status. They can't guarantee an improvement in health. No company can. So just wanted to kind of clarify that as a disclaimer. But they do guarantee an improvement in carotenoid antioxidant status, and we know that there's tremendous associations with health when you can boost these antioxidant status in the body. So I'll share with you another story here. My brother-in-law, who I showed you on the one of the first slides there, I ended up scanning him, and his first score was not too great. He had scanned 16,000, pretty much around where his mom was, that was diagnosed with cancer. Now, this is not diagnosis of disease, but it's very sensitive to oxidative stress in the body and the amount of antioxidants that you have. And so his were really low. And so I knew that if he was going to continue down the path of eating and living the life the way he was eating, that he was not going to have good health for very long. And this scanner actually gave him a number that put something in front of his face. And so even though that he's kind of stubborn and didn't want to take the supplements, he said, I'm just going to do it with diet. And I said, well, good luck. I hope you do. And he went out and bought a $400, juicer blender thing and started juicing like crazy. And the last time, a few months later, when I came up to visit him, he actually significantly was able to improve his score there. So he was able to get his score up to 56,000, a huge improvement. Now, what was interesting is last time I saw him a few months ago, he was back around 31,000 because he was able to get his score up through being very diligent with his diet and juicing, but he wasn't able to sustain that. So now that he saw his score go back down, he says, you know what, I really do need to take the supplements and get my score up. I'm not able to maintain the diet it takes to get your score up. And so what he's doing is really what I believe is the best approach. He's doing both. He's taking the supplements, and he's doing the best that he can with his diet and his lifestyle. So it's been great to see that happen. And let's talk a little bit about the founders of the manufacture of these supplements. The company is Pharmanex. They have a really interesting background. These are the three founders. Michael Chang is the former director of medicinal chemistry for Merck for 15 years. Joe Chang is one of the chief scientists over at Wyeth. He invented Lodyne and Rapamune. Carl Djerassi is known as the father of the birth control pill. What these guys were doing was drug discovery, looking at nature to figure out how they could produce the next generation of medicine. They always went to nature first to look for potential actives. And they had screened about 50,000 plant samples during their careers. And what they found is that they had great results with these natural extracts when they were isolated and formulated properly. And then whenever they would bring it to the business side of the pharmaceutical development program, they would never want to develop the natural products. And the only reason why is because you can't patent things that occur in nature. So they would manipulate the molecule a little bit, not these scientists, but the chemistry side of things. And what they would do then is often they would get more side effects. It wouldn't be as active. And these drug discovery scientists that were looking at nature said, you know what, the natural works better, but we can't bring the natural to market through pharmaceuticals. So when they looked at the nutritional industry, to them it was just a bunch of snake oil. Nobody was doing the level of science that they were used to seeing. And so they raised $40 million in venture capitalist funding, and they started Pharmanex back in 1995. The company was distributing their products in about 40,000 retail pharmacies across the United States, and were doing really well. But if you go down the pharmacy aisle and you see hundreds of different bottles of things, how do you pick out and how do you choose a product when all you're doing is looking at the label and the price? And so Pharmanex's products were a little bit more than the average product because of the science that went into them, but it was hard to educate consumers about that. So what they wanted to do is they were looking for a better distribution channel. Merck actually tried to buy it for $135 million back in 1998. A division of Monsanto tried to buy him for about the same, and then a company called Nu Skin Enterprises, which is a direct sales company in skincare, was looking for a research engine. They were doing about $500 million a year in sales. They had money to invest. And they ended up buying the company for about the same Merck was willing to offer them, but they had a direct sales model through independent contractors that could spend more time with people educating them. And they continued to grow the company significantly, and that's how it came into this business model. This is their corporate headquarters today. It went from a small startup company to a multi-billion-dollar company that operates in 53 countries around the world. This building here on the top right was their main tower, and then this other more futuristic-looking building that you can see on the top left as well was a $110 million innovation center that just opened up about 3 years ago. On the bottom right, you'll see a facility that's a $50 million facility over in Asia. These are the top research institutions in the world that's studying aging and nutritional intervention in health. They house 100 full-time scientists that Pharmanex employs, and about half of them are PhD level scientists, and they work with major universities all over the world to really comb through all of the science and look at what the consensus of the academic literature is, as well as in conjunction with their research that they do on their side as well, so that as physicians, we don't have to try and figure out, is this study good or is that study good? There's so many confusing different opinions and that are conflicting in the literature. And what Pharmanex does with their research team is this is a company that I trust to do a lot of that due diligence for me. So the technology has been used at Stanford University for some studies. It was Yale University did a 10-year study with the technology that recently got published, concluding it's a biomarker of health as it relates to diet and lifestyle risk factors for disease. Texas Tech Medical School has 3 scanners in their program, thanks to Dr. Feld, and they're actually just on the news just a few weeks ago talking about the benefits of the program and why they're offering it there. New York College of Optometry is using it. There was a major study at a major ophthalmology conference last year that got published. Even Dr. Oz did a whole show about it in preventing cancer. The Discovery Channel has done a whole episode about the research that they're doing in epigenetics and aging, which I'll talk about here in a minute. They were the most innovative company in the entire United States by the American Business Awards, along with Apple Computer. Pharmanex was the first nutraceutical company to be able to sponsor the U.S. Olympic team. They're NSF certified. They're in the physician's desk reference. Grab your book. You can look up Pharmanex. You'll see it in there with all the drugs. And then they're top rated by Forbes, Dun & Bradstreet, and the Better Business Bureau. So this is and I'm just really touching the tip of the iceberg here. This is a company that is just fantastic, and in 13 years that I've been working with them, I've never been embarrassed by any of the products that they've come out with. And so we talked about antioxidants and nutrition and how we're addressing that. But really where we're also going into is now we are understanding gene expression and how as we get older, our genes are changing the way that they're functioning, and that's actually why we age and why we see a deterioration of health or a degeneration of the body. This new science called AgeLock is a patented technology that allows Pharmanex to measure gene expression in the body as it's relating to the aging process. They use these gene chips, which are standard genetic tests, where they can now measure your genes in the body and what it looks like when you're young versus what your genes are functioning like when you're old. And the databases are very different. You can see the differences between the youthful gene, this happens to be for the mitochondria, as well as for the old gene. So now that you have this database, the goal is can you screen for natural ingredients that have been thought to be good at slowing down aging or improving tissues, health in certain regions of the body, and can we actually make these genes go back to functioning when you were younger and healthier? And the research has now shown us and proven us that we can. This is a major breakthrough, and this was out of LifeGen Technologies. There's over 300 papers that have been peer-reviewed and published, and this was a recent acquisition of Pharmanex. over the last 6 years, they've been developing a product that can reset the genes for the entire body, and it's based off caloric restriction studies that were done on aging. And so what this does is this targets 6 major aging defense mechanisms that you can see here on the left. A couple of them are DNA protection, repair, systemic detoxification, inflammatory balance, tissue regeneration, mechanisms regulating metabolism. They actually know what the genes function like when you're old for these mechanisms versus when you're young. And now they can reset them or restore that function with a natural product, blend of ingredients that puts it back to how it was when you were young. And this affects really everything in the body, from the brain, the heart, metabolism, skin, bone, joints, eyes, physical performance, and immune health. It works with over 1,000 genes that are controlling aging in the body. And yes, it's been published. There was a recent publication in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology with this final product, with the brand name of it, proving and showing that it will actually protect the skin from UV damage. So at the top here, you'll see different levels of UV damage that was applied to the skin, and the redness and inflammation and cell death and injury that was caused. And on the bottom, you'll see with just 2 months of this supplement, the same level, the 1 minimal erythemal dose caused no damage in the skin, and you had a significant reduction of upwards of 50 to 75% at higher doses. So this is a pretty miraculous study, and this is actually not just good for skin health, but this is a very good study for overall inflammation in the body. They also did studies on the brain, cerebral cortex, and when you're old, your genes are functioning like this, and when you're young, they're functioning like this. And so what they can literally do is they can mimic the only study that's ever been done to show that you can reset these genes or preserve youthfulness through this caloric restriction, which led to a major discovery of being able to analyze the genes related to aging. So essentially, when you're old, you look like your cerebral cortex genes look like this, and the goal is to make them look like this, and that's what you can do with this new product that just came out. They also did functional brain MRI scans at the University of Utah, demonstrating within just 2 months that you see improvements in brain function. You're looking at the areas of the brain that's activated versus the larger area with the treated group, and you'll see more areas of the brain are able to be activated with the product. And you can also demonstrate an improved antioxidant levels with the biophotonic scanner within 2 months. It's also guaranteed to increase antioxidant scores in your patients, and that's something you can easily measure in your practice. So let's talk a little bit about how the revenue model works as we got through the science, and then as we conclude this call, I think we're going to have a couple other physicians here that are going to be able to chime in if we have some, if they're able to join us. And so just hang tight here as we go through the revenue model. So most physicians charge $20 for the test. If you remember, it's $1 to do the test. It's done by the staff. And so depending on how many patients you're scanning, I know Dr. Feld scans nearly every patient, at least recommends it to everybody. So if you're doing 10 scans a day, you're looking at a $50,000 cash revenue stream this year just in testing fees without having to fight insurance companies for that revenue. And then the average practice has about 3,000 to 4,000 patients. If we're just looking at 5% of those patients starting on the therapy, this is the revenue stream from the nutritional supplement. So just like a dermatologist can generate income from selling skincare, physicians can make income by recommending supplements to their patients. What's nice about this is there's no inventory, no billing, none of that. It's actually direct shipped and direct billed by Pharmanex for you. All you do is fax in the orders for the patients, and everything else is taken care of for you. So there's applications to all different types of healthcare providers, from cardiology to internal medicine, ophthalmology, dentistry, podiatry, chiropractic, dermatology, and many others as well, because again, these carotenoid antioxidants are really protecting all the cells that are in your body. The startup investment is very minimal. It's about $3,400 to get started. You get everything that you need, including a lot of samples of the product for you and your staff. It also includes a personalized web store that you can direct patients to. It includes your first 600 scans. It includes attendance to our training that we do at our corporate headquarters, our healthcare professional forum. And it also includes a practice accelerator system and training to get you off to a quick start This isn't anything that you need to figure out. There's a process in place and includes all the training to do that. The only ongoing expenses you have is it's $1 per scan after you do your first 600. And then there's a monthly maintenance on the device, which is $209, which is waived when you're recommending the product as well. So none of the physicians that I work with are paying that fee. It's only if you let the device sit in the closet and collect dust. Worst case scenario, they'll charge you that fee. But if you don't want the device and you're not using it, then you can always send it back. There's no long-term commitment. It's just a month-to-month agreement there. So in addition to this, we've got something exciting going on that just became available. I'm not going to be able to talk about this much here tonight, but this science at identifying genes related to aging and product development, Pharmanex has been able to apply this to skincare. And for the first time, you have a personalized smart skincare device. There's now about $40 million of R&D behind it. And what this can do is this can use a 3D printing type of technology to create over 2,000 customized formulas that are unique to your patient. It does everything automatically through an algorithm. And what happens is patients purchase the device. They then get they go through a skincare assessment on their own, and then it gives them a code of what cartridges they order. And then they have these cartridges of different skincare ingredients that get shipped to them in the mail, and they have a customized skincare device with no bottles that's specifically to them and what they want and what their preferences are. So this is a whole new type of way of doing skincare. I've been using this now for about 9 months, and I can tell you it's extremely easy, and we get really, really great results with this. And this is another way if you're looking for another ancillary revenue stream into your practice. So when we look at ways that physicians can participate, you really have 3 ways. Number 1, you can generate income from scanning and recommending the products to your patients. You generate income from referrals. If you know some colleagues that you think would benefit from this, we do have a referral program. And then if you're interested in working with us in maybe building the network of providers to use these technologies, there's some significant revenue model. If you're entrepreneurial, if that's of interest to you, just let us know and we can talk to you more about that. So at the end of this webinar, you'll find that you're going to get a survey. If you could please answer the 7 questions that are on there. It will take you maybe 2 minutes to do. That will give us some great feedback so that we can follow up with you accordingly and we can make these future webinars better. I also recommend contacting the person that invited you onto this webinar as well so that you can decide what the next step is if you are ready to get started or you have some questions or you want to look at some of the literature. Here are some upcoming events that we have. Tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll do another webinar just like this with a few other physicians. Our next healthcare professional seminar is going to be in Provo, Utah, our main headquarters, May 11th to the 13th. And there's several events that are going on in the Bay Area this month as well, that if you are in that area or you know people that you think would be interested in seeing the live event, let us know. And so let's see if we can answer some of the questions that we have here, and then we'll see if we can also bring on board Dr. Bryant-Bruce here too. So okay, it looks like Dr. Bruce is here, and I know that many of you were expecting her on, and we had a little bit of a hiccup in some communication here, but I see that she's on here. I'm going to unmute her. And Dr. Bryant-Bruce, are you with us? Okay, it looks like I'm trying to unmute you, but for some reason I am not hearing you here. Dr. Bruce. Okay, Dr. Bryant-Bruce, if you want to give me a call on my cell phone, I can plug you in that way. In the meantime, oh, there you go. I can hear you now.
Okay, I had mine on mute on this side.
All right. Well, let me introduce everybody to Dr. Bryant-Bruce. I know you may have seen her on the flyer, but she is a very famous doctor over in California. I'm going to let her tell you guys a little bit about some of her accomplishments and her background, because she'll do a better job than I will. But we're very delighted to have you on the call with us, Dr. Bryant-Bruce. And if you could, I know you've been having some great experience with this, with your practice, and we'd love to hear any insights that you have that you'd like to share with the audience here tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I am one of what they call the pioneers in concierge medicine. I'm an integrative family physician, and I work out here in California. And I was introduced to the PharmaNex program and the scanner a few years back and introduced it into my clinic because I'm always looking for top products and top services to provide for my patients. And one of the things that I frequently get asked about is nutrition because people they really want to know about nutrition. They're becoming more and more suspicious of the pharmaceutical industries. And as they're shifting over, there's a lot of stuff out there on the shelves. And so I had been combing and looking for products that I could endorse and that I felt comfortable recommending to my patients. As I investigated PharmaNex, I realized that it was not just a superior product, but in the scanner device, for the first time, I had a way of measuring how my patients were doing. I had a way of measuring their baseline, and I had a way of measuring their progress. The neat thing about the scanner was it really has changed the way that I practice, in that I've always been very, very much based in nutrition and fitness, but it has increased that even more because, I talk to patients all the time about nutrition, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, and they have the best of intentions, and they walk out the door, and they don't really make the changes because it just doesn't make an emotional connection. But with the scanner, it's almost like giving them a nutritional report card. And most people are flunking, and nobody wants to get an F on their report card. So it creates an emotional trigger that makes them want to do better. Not only does it make them want to do better, but now they have a way of seeing that they are doing better. And I have a way of holding them accountable for their actions. And after I've scanned them and they see where they are, I also have something to offer them in a high quality supplement with the PharmaNex products. I had one patient who was a severe diabetic. She had had kidney transplant and she had been placed on prednisone, which blew out her pancreas. And so she was a brittle diabetic, and as with many diabetics, if they get injuries to the legs, then they can develop significant wounds, and she did. And for 2 years, we managed her in some of the top wound clinics. She was managed down at UCSD, University of California, San Diego, University of California, San Francisco, over at Palo Alto, Stanford University, without any real success. She was placed on stem cell on the product Apligraft, and she wasn't progressing well. So eventually the insurance company said, we won't pay for this anymore. And Apligraft gave her some of the product for a few months, and then they said, we're really not seeing any progress either, and this is an extremely expensive product. It was like $1,000 a sheet. So they took it from her. And even though I had been talking to her about nutrition, again, I hadn't rang that emotional bell yet. And so she had not made the changes that I was requesting of her. And at this point, she is now in danger and in fear of losing her legs. So she came to me almost hysterical, and she said, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my legs, and I don't have any alternatives. I don't know what to do. So I said, will you try the LifePak Nano? Will you give me 2 months with LifePak Nano? You are nutritionally deficient, and you aren't able to heal these wounds. If you take the LifePak Nano for 2 months, I guarantee you that I'm going to improve your scores and that you're going to start to see results. So she did. She started taking the LifePak Nano, and in 4 weeks, she came back into my office, and she was in shock because the wounds had begun not just healing, but healing significantly. In 6 weeks, she came dancing back into my office doing this little jig because the wounds were almost completely healed. And by 8 weeks, they had resolved, and we're now almost a year and a half out, and the wounds have not returned. She's been able to return back to the workforce because she had been put out on disability, and she will not be without her LifePak Nano, and she has now started her age-lock youth. So it's stories like this that drive us in this business, because we know that we are making a difference. And there are just tons and tons and tons of stories. So we see the evidence, and I'm a product user, and I have my own product experiences, and they have all been positive. And one of the things that I'm very happy about is that I'm on the Age Lock Youth, and I'm an older dog, so I have gray hair, or I had gray hair, and since I've been taking the Age Lock Youth now for about 9 months, my gray hair has almost completely reverted back to the black. So the products do work, and they allow us to make a difference in the health status of America. Right now, the medicine is operating in a disease management model, and we are offering a wellness optimization model. And I believe that this will be the route that medicine will have to go, from both a financial standpoint and from a demand standpoint, because the patients are going to demand better than what they've been given.
Well said, Dr. Bryant-Bruce, and thanks so much for sharing those stories. And you made a great point there that evidence-based medicine, sometimes the best evidence is your experience, right?